Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to do the beautifully basic blanket. Now for this tutorial I am making a baby size blanket, but you can definitely increase your foundation chain and the length of your blanket to create whatever size that you need. I will put all of the pattern notes down below in the description box so you can check it out if you want to size up your blanket or even size down this blanket. We're going to add a nice scalloped edging and a nice picot to both sides. And again, this blanket, it works up really quickly. It's just double crochets. You get a really fantastic blanket from just using double crochets. I particularly love this pattern for those last minute projects. If you have a last minute baby shower, or even just you can make a much larger blanket for coworkers, family, friends, and it doesn't take very much time because this stitch is very repetitive. It is a 1-row repeat stitch pattern. You can sit in front of the TV and just crochet, 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 and in no time you'll have a blanket. They make perfect gifts. It is the most basic blanket and it turns out so beautifully. And we're just going to add a little very basic border just to bring the whole blanket together. And I especially love this blanket using a self-striping yarn because you don't have to worry about the color changes and you get a nice looking effect. Now this is also wonderful for changing colors on every row. So you could really make a very creative, very colorful blanket with this pattern as well. For this project, I am using the Mandala by Liger brand. Now this is a 3-weight acrylic yarn, and in each of these cakes you get about 590 yards, and it's about 150 grams. This colorway is called Liger. I'm also going to be using a 6mm crochet hook. We're going to start with a slip knot onto our hook, and you want a chain multiple for as wide as you want your blanket of 3. So what that means is just chain 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 until you get as wide of a blanket as you want. Once you have the chain multiple of 3 for your foundation chain row, chain an extra chain. So the multiple is 3 plus 1. We're going to work back into the 3rd chain from the hook and we're going to work 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. So that stitch right there, I'm going to work 3 double crochets all into that same stitch or that same chain. Once you have your 3 double crochets into that 3rd chain from the hook, we're going to go ahead and skip the next 2. So remember there's a chain right next to where you just worked your 3 double crochets. Make sure you count that and the next one, so we're skipping 2, and do the same thing again into the 3rd, so skip 2 into the next one, 3 double crochets. And that's the pattern. We're going to skip 2 and work into the next 3 double crochets, skip 2. So you're just going to work this pattern, skipping 2 and working 3 double crochets into the next all the way down your chain. After you work your last set of 3 double crochets, you should have 1 stitch or 1 chain on the end. Just leave it. It doesn't count as anything, and I will show you how to start row 2. You can see I have 1 chain left at the end. Just ignore it. We're on to row 2. Row 2, and every following row starts with a chain 1. Turn your work. You're going to work 3 double crochets into the center double crochet from the previous row. So that one right there, it's kind of popping out into each of these little double crochet clusters. You're going to work in the top of that middle double crochet. So find your first middle double crochet and find the stitch right there at the top, and just work 3 double crochets right into the top of that stitch. Skip to the next. There's our 2 end double crochets. There's our middle double crochet. There's the stitch right on top, and work into that stitch. 3 double crochets. And that is the pattern. So this is a really simple but nice looking stitch pattern. If you're in a hurry, this works up super quickly. All we're doing is working 3 double crochets into the middle stitch from the previous little double crochet cluster. Now here is my last double crochet, 3 double crochet cluster. This is where we, from our foundation chain, where we worked back into the 3rd stitch, so that those skip stitches count as one of our double crochets. You just want to find that middle stitch. So this one right here is that very end. We're going to work in the next one over. That's the middle, and then you can see there's a stitch on the end. We're going to ignore that. So we just want to work into this top stitch here and work our 3 double crochet cluster. And by leaving the end chain or the end stitch, you get a sort of a wavy, almost a border that you don't even have to do anything with. Of course, you've got the bottom that is your foundation chain, which is flat, so we will be adding a border, but as you can see, these sort of create their own little scallops. So keep working that pattern. Every row starts with a chain 1 and a turn, and then we're going to work our 3 double crochet clusters right into the middle, the top of that middle double crochet from the previous row. I'm working into my last shell, my 3 double crochet cluster, and that is the top of my blanket now. I have worked quite a bit of rows, as you can see. The top, as well as your foundation chain row down here, are both flat. You can see the sides, as you've been working, have kind of created a little border, but we're going to add something a little bit more just to pull this whole blanket together. So you have your chain 1. We just want to slip stitch across those 3 stitches so we can get to the spaces. We're going to work in the spaces now. So you see you have the spaces in between your 3 double crochets. Go ahead and slip stitch into that space. And I'm going to chain 1, and now I want 5 double crochets into that space. We're going to skip to the next space, and I am just going to single crochet into that space. Into the next space, I'm going to work 5 double crochets. Into the next space, single crochet. Into the next space, 5 double crochets, and just keep repeating this all the way down into every space until you get to the corner. I have just worked a 5 double crochet shell. Now, depending on how many spaces you have in between each corner on the top and the bottom, you may end like I will with a shell in this last space, or you may end with a single crochet. But it doesn't matter where you end because we're going to be slip stitching to the corner regardless if you have ended on a single crochet or a shell. So I'm going to finish my last 2 spaces, working a 5 double crochet shell into this last space. I'm going to slip stitch across these stitches, and I want to find that corner stitch right on the end and just slip stitch into it. Now we're going to work down the sides, and we already have a little bit of a scalloped edge that will sort of match this on the top and the bottom of our blanket. What I'm going to do on the sides is just work little picots on the top of each of these little scallops from the 2 rows of our double crochets all along. So once you're in the corner, you're going to want to find the space in between the 2 rows. If you find the top of each little scallop or shell that was created from this pattern, you'll see there's a space you can work into, and that's the space that you want to use all the way down when you're working your picots. So I'm going to work a slip stitch here into that space in between my 2 rows, and I'm going to chain 3 and just slip stitch right back into it, and that will create a nice little picot. Now to get to the next space, I'm going to work into the same little space, the top of that double crochet that we worked our double crochets into. And you just want to single crochet. Next space, I'm going to slip stitch and work a picot. So 3, chain 3, and slip stitch right back into that same spot. Single crochet into this space here. Remember, it's always going to be where your 3 double crochets were worked into as you were working up your blanket. Single crochet, find the space in between those 2 rows, and slip stitch. Work a picot, find your next space, single crochet. So work this all the way down. Once you get down to your last space, so I just worked a single crochet into this space right here. Here is my last 2 rows. I'm going to work a picot. So I've got my last picot done. Now I want to turn the corner. So what I'm going to do, I want to get to this first space and start working my shells again, my 5 double crochet shells. So I'm just going to go into the stitch where my first double crochets are worked out of, and I'm going to slip stitch into that stitch, chain 1, and slip stitch into the space, and that will get you around the corner. Into these spaces we are going to work our clusters. So I'm going to chain 1 just to get up to the height. I'm going to work 5 double crochets into this first space. Once you have your 5 double crochet cluster, find the next space and single crochet into it. Skip these clusters, find your next space, and work 5 double crochets. Find the next space, single crochet. You're just going to work this pattern all the way across, and I will show you how to get around the next corner. I'm at my last space over here. I need to work a shell. So I'm going to work 5 double crochets into that space. Once you have your 5 double crochet shell, you can slip stitch in that space right on the corner. Now we're going to do the same thing and work picots on the tops or in between those 2 rows. So you can see where it kind of bumps out. You want to work a picot into those stitches and a single crochet into the stitches in between. So because I am at the corner, I'm going to use this as my picot stitch. I'm going to work a slip stitch up here though, since this is still on this side and I want to get onto this side. So you can either chain 1 if you feel like your tension is too tight. So if you want to chain 1 and then work a slip stitch right into the stitch that's kind of next to that space right there. And that will help to get you around the corner if you feel like your tension is too tight. Now I'm going to work a picot. Going to find the space in between that little bump or that little scallop, and I'm going to single crochet. Find the space as best as you can in between those 2 rows. Sometimes they're harder to see, but if you just kind of aim for the top of or the peak of that little bump, that is perfectly fine. Work a picot, find the next space, single crochet. You're going to work this all the way down until we get back to the top of our blanket, and we will finish off and have a nice, beautifully basic blanket. Once you've worked a picot and single crochet stitch up that last side, we want to join. So here I have worked my last picot. There's the single crochet stitch. Here is where I worked the picot stitch in between the 2 rows. We're back at the beginning. I'm going to work a single crochet into that last stitch, and then I'm going to just go into a stitch up here, slip stitch, and that will join, especially if the color is matching, it will join that pink together and you'll get a more uniform border.